Hello, muffins. This is a video all about one of our key scenes, which is the introduction of Madeline scene in Vertigo. So, what we're going to be looking for as we go through this scene, we're going to be looking for indicators of Hitchcock as an auteur. So, we're going to be looking for some of his motifs. Some of his motifs are going to be thematic, some are going to be structural, some are going to be aesthetic. Some of the motifs we're going to be thinking about Andrew Sarris and his description of auteur theory. So we're going to be looking for technical competence, style, and interior meaning as well. We're also going to be looking for evidence of what we call pure cinema, which is this idea that the director is using film form to show us ideas. The characters aren't telling us things. It's this show, don't tell idea that I know you got sick of hearing about in your coursework. We're also going to be looking for things that will identify this scene as an example of something that uses a classicism approach. So classicism is a scene that would start with, in a typically Hollywood way, where we have an establishing shot moving in to introduce the character as a two shot, and then a shot reverse shot as a conversation, or elements of that idea of classicism. So let's begin a little bit before we have to start here. So let's get Gavin do his thing. There's something about actually this office that reminds me of Ernie's actually. The wood panelled sort of doorways and the very traditional masculine. Here we go. You can see her there. Oh, okay, pausing. Ernie's. This is our establishing shot, so classicism here as we move in towards Ernie's. This scene is introduced to us with a cross dissolve. So, cross dissolve is used to condense time and space. So, Hitchcock is using that here to kind of create a dreamlike quality for this scene. The reason I say it's kind of a dreamlike quality is because there's a cross dissolve in a moment. The camera's going to move in towards the doors and we're going to go into the building. It's like a point of view shot, but it's not been anchored with a face. Like we don't see whose eyes we're looking through. It could be Scotty, but it could also be the man himself. This could also be a Hitchcock point of view shot. We're moving into this space because it's not anchored. We're not really sure. So we can argue that there's this other element, this other dynamic to this scene where we're thinking about this idea of the voyeur, this idea that Hitchcock and the audience are a character in the scene. Okay, we're moving towards the doors here. As we go towards the doors, I want you to look for sort of like a ionic shape within these red stained glass windows. So we can see that inside this location, we've got that sort of like that lush red, and then we've got this sort of like, we could argue sort of like phallic and ionic symbolic elements on the doors. We're going to enter here another cross dissolve to tell us we're going into this dreamlike state. We're going into Scotty's fantasy now. Here he is. Okay, so um, so now that we've entered the scene, we have some really interesting things in the background. On his shoulder there, I want you to look at that woman in grey. We're going to see her a few times. Now, she's not just there by chance. She has been placed. She's going to walk across the scene in a moment. She's wearing exactly the same kind of outfit that Madeline wears later on. What Hitchcock's doing in this scene is that he is laying the groundwork for one of his famous motifs, the MacGuffin, which is a structural motif. Okay, at this point in the film, we're not aware of Carlotta. We're not aware of obviously Gavin's plot to kill his wife. But what Hitchcock does here in this scene is that he packs the mise-en-scène, because he's using pure cinema techniques to tell us everything we need to know. This scene tells us what's going to happen in the whole film. So if you look there, the shoulder that he's looking towards, the shoulder that he's looking towards, right there, we have this sort of like this ghostly sort of like Madeline figure who appears to be sort of like haunting this scene. The scene starts with this incredible, very technically sort of Hitchcockian camera movement here. The camera pans out and across. It's called a set piece. So it's a set piece of camera work. And in a moment, I'm going to talk to you about the cinematography as it dips down and up. I want you to take a moment now just to talk about the mise-en-scène again. There's lots for mise-en-scène here. The carnations that we're going to see, these are the exact same colour and type of flower that Madeline buys in the bouquet, and it's the same as the flowers that Carlotta has in the bouquet. So this again is Hitchcock establishing that MacGuffin, that fake storyline. And if you look at the construction of the scene, you've got pillars and doorways that don't seem to go anywhere. There's no windows. It's kind of oppressive. I wouldn't want to eat there. It would feel really claustrophobic, to be honest with you. And it's maze-like. It's as if we're inside his mind. It's very confusing. Here we go. Okay, so the camera is searching for her. Okay, so this panning movement, this movement is looking for her. We've the shot starts with Scotty looking, and then it doesn't cut to his point of view, but the camera is still looking. So again, we've got this extra agent, if you like, in the scene, which is the camera, and it appears to have its own sense of agency, this own sense of like a dynamic sense where it's as if the camera has its own sense of character and purpose. There she is, the lady in green. Now I want you to look at the space in the lower third of the frame. What you've got is kind of like a triangle of negative space, and she is at the top bit of that triangle. So that is drawing the eye. So we've got what we're called leading lines, and they're pointing to her. And we've got some sort of like halo lighting happening upon her, sort of like upon her back. So she is highlighted in the frame with the use of negative space, with the use of light, and in a moment the music is going to start. So once we've spotted her, the music is going to lead in, and it's going to be her sort of her leitmotif, her theme, Madeline's theme is going to come in. Other things that make her highlighted within the mise-en-scène, she is wearing the colour green, which is the opposite side of the colour wheel to red. So the juxtaposition of colour signals her as being different. As you can see, no one else in the scene. Everyone's wearing very muted colours. We're drawn to her. If we choose our spectatorship theory here, we recognise our sort of like our secondary protagonist, and now we are getting into the mind's eye and following her. Let's just see the camera movement here. Camera spots her, music starts. There's the ghost. Do you see what I mean? The ghost of Madeline walks past. The camera goes low. Now, what we've got here, that low camera, it feels as if the camera has this own sense of self, and it's kind of stalking her like a predator stalks its prey, and it's sort of like crawling its way towards her. The costume with that beautiful bare sort of like back section that she has there on her costume, it creates a sense of vulnerability about her character. And what's really clever, what is so clever here, is the proxemics. when we come to see Madeline later at the art gallery, she sits on a bench and she looks at a picture, and we just see the back of her head. This is so clever. The position that she's in now, we see the back of her head, and towards that corner part of the frame there's a doorway, which is in the art gallery scene. That's where the portrait hangs. So this shot is sort of mimicking that. And then the picture on the other side of the frame up there, that's very similar to the picture that is next to Carlotta's portrait in the art gallery. So what Hitchcock here is doing, he's using the mise-en-scène here so cleverly, and he's using proxemics so cleverly, because when it comes round to us seeing her in the art gallery, we've already seen her. We've already seen her in that position. It's kind of like creating a sense for us, the audience and Scotty, this sense of deja vu. We recognize it. We've seen this before. And it's in this scene. The flowers, the proxemics, the positioning. We've seen this before. So by the time we see it a second time and then a third time, we are buying into this ghost story because we recognize things. We're like, yeah, I've seen that. I know this. So it's kind of creating our belief in the MacGuffin. Stalking camera. And we've got the spirals in her hair, the same spirals that we see in Carlotta, the same spirals that we see in the art gallery later on. There's a reaction shot there. Beautiful. Now here we go. So this is Scotty's point of view. He spends the majority of this film peeping at her through doorways from his car. It's all about the way that he looks at her. And we have a sort of like a door frame here in the foreground, and then we have a separate frame behind her, a separate doorway behind her, creating another frame. So in terms of connotations, we have this character here of Judy pretending to be Madeline. She's feeling entrapment, so she is in like this box, this cage created by all these frames. But again, the proxemics, her position there, side profile, exuding to be looked atness. She knows, her character knows that she is being watched by Scotty, and that this is the moment where she has to exude to be looked atness. Look at me, don't look at me. But the framing here, the frame within a frame, that's Carlotta's portrait once more. Can we see that she looks like a picture frame, like a picture within a frame? She looks like a portrait because she's framed and then she's framed again. So it's creating this idea that she is this object to be looked at, but it's also creating the Carlotta MacGuffin so that we buy into that ghost story. We feel that deja vu. There he is. So can we see that he's also got frames behind him? Everyone in this scene's got frames, frames, frames. Every time we cut back to him, slightly closer, slightly closer. So the reaction shot's becoming more and more intense. Every time we go back to him, he is feeling like more emotional, and we get a closer sense of that emotion. Closer, it creates intensity. Here she comes. This walk, the walk towards the camera, so clever. We see this a few times, walking through the doorway towards Scotty. This moment is so intense for him that he tries to recreate it as the film goes on. Hitchcock says that this is a film about a man trying to recreate a woman, a dead woman, so it's about necrophilia. And this is the moment that Scotty tries to recreate over and over and over. That walk, she walks towards him through him, and then she stops in front of him, and in a minute she's going to go, look at me, look at me. But that walk, she does it here, she does it in the apartment when she gets fished out of the river and she walks towards him. Where am I? that moment there, that's like this walk is replicated. And again, the final time when when she's reincarnated, he's done her up again to look like Madeline, and then she walks out of the bathroom and towards him, and she does that walk. She doesn't say anything. In fact, the character of Madeline doesn't say anything for 45 minutes. The first 45 minutes of this film is just following her. She's silent. This Hitchcock blonde, this classic woman, this beautiful woman is passive for 45 minutes to the point where she doesn't have a line of dialogue. She's just this thing, this object to look at and obsess over for 45 minutes. She comes. Do you see how she's exuding to be looked atness here? With the if we could think about Mulvey, that idea is that the female character is there to be looked at, and this is her function in this scene, to be looked at, to be noticed, and it's got separate levels to it because she is a beautiful thing on screen to look at. She is an actress, Kim Novak, playing Judy, who's playing Madeline. And the job of the actress, the job of the performer, Judy as Madeline, is to be looked at. Now, I'm going to let this next moment play through and then I'm going to talk about it a little bit. Okay, so in that moment, it looks really small, but there's several things in here that create a very dynamic and intense moment. Okay, the music is reaching its climax. We have the color, it sort of like pulsates into brighter red and then back down again. And we cut back to Scotty. He sort of like, he looks away briefly and starts to look at her out of the side of his eye. This is the moment of intense arousal for Scotty. We know that he's like lost his mojo after the accident. This is where he and us, the audience, um, this is where the obsession begins. And Hitchcock signals to us using pure cinema techniques. There's no dialogue in this scene, so it's all pure cinema using using sound, using cinematography, using the mise en scène, the lighting. He's trying to visualize that arousal in Scotty. The lighting sort of pulsates, the music climaxes. She's sort of like their eyes almost meet, but not quite. And it is this moment of sort of like intense emotion expressed through cinematic tools. Here we go. So at the beginning of this, I said Hitchcock tells us everything we need to know in this scene. And this moment where she's walking out, all these doorways that don't go anywhere and confusing sort of like set design. She walks past this mirror to Madeline's. There it is. So the scene is sort of like telling us everything we need to know about the film. It's setting up the MacGuffin, but also once you've watched this film through a few times, you realise that actually it's setting up these moments of deja vu, the flowers, the colours, the music, the hair, the proxemics. It's all being set up so that we recognise it in the film later on. But then at the end, Hitchcock's like, two Madelines. In fact, there's that other ghostly sort of like Madeline in grey walking, well, to look like Madeline in grey looking, walking through the scene as well earlier. So he's setting up the MacGuffin, but he's also telling us there is a MacGuffin at the same time. So let's just let this scene play out. There he goes. He's made his mind up. And it ends with a cross dissolve as well. So that scene is bookended with a cross dissolve in, or two cross dissolves in and cross dissolves out, kind of isolating it from the rest of the film a little bit. This is a moment of such intense, immediate obsession for Scotty that he is trying to chase that feeling throughout the rest of the film, trying to recreate Madeline, but that Madeline in that scene, that first moment that he sees her. Um, it's such an interesting film for you as film students to take apart and to use. So there are many Hitchcock motifs in there. There's the cinematic set piece with the camera. We see his use of the MacGuffin, which is a structural. We see the thematic motifs, this idea that he's establishing this sort of like idea that she's a ghost, and his obsession is this taboo obsession about trying to recreate a dead woman. We have lots of different elements in there for you to look at for your scene analysis. Okay, I hope this has been helpful, and I will stop recording.